This morning, we are getting a look at a new documentary that examines American policies and opinions before, during, and after the Holocaust. The U.S. and the Holocaust is co-directed by Ken Burns, Lynn Novick, and Sarah Botstein. And in the clip you're about to see, you can see how easily a society can change and the vital lesson we can all learn from the Holocaust.
The fragility of civilized behavior is the one thing you really learn. Because these people, who we now see in these photographs, these sepia photographs, and they're receding into time, they're no different from us. You look at your neighbors, the people at the dry cleaners, the waiters in the restaurant, that's who these people were. Don't kid yourself.
We have seen the nadir of human behavior, and we have no guarantee that it won't recur. If we can make that clear and graphic and understandable, not as something to imitate, but as a warning of what can happen to human beings, then perhaps we have one shield against its recurrence.
And Ken Burns and Lynn Novick join us now. That is such a well-chosen clip because it is so true. We want to imagine that we, if we were alive then, would be the heroes, the ones that stood up, the ones who shouted. And yet the documentary is about how we as a country had that opportunity and clearly did not shout loud enough.
Let's say the important thing. We're not responsible for the Holocaust. We let in more people than any other sovereign nation, but we didn't do anywhere near enough. What we could, even if we fulfilled the pernicious and tiny quotas, we could have had 5 times as many people rescued from the Holocaust. We could have shouted louder. Our public leaders could have done that. The Congress could have revoked some of these terrible anti-immigration laws. The American public could have woken up to the evidence that they were seeing from the very beginning of Hitler's regime and said, you know what? Who we are as a nation of immigrants. We've been built on the strength that immigrants add, and we should try to get as many people in. We did none of those things.
And then, Lynn, when the U.S. tried to shout and criticize, they would say, well, wait a second, what are you doing in your own country? They would point to Mississippi, for instance, and Jim Crow. Could you talk about that?
Yes.
I'd never thought about that before until looking at your document.
Yeah, so Hitler and the Nazis instituted something called the Nuremberg Laws early in the regime to basically take away Jewish people's rights as citizens of their country. And they used our Jim Crow laws as a model. So they came here and they studied how we had created a whole legal structure, Jim Crow, to make sure that African Americans did not have the full rights of citizenship. And they were very aware of everything we were doing, and they used it as a model. And so when we would criticize them and say, wait, you're persecuting the Jews, they would turn around and say,
back, America.
Right.
And you showed some very graphic images of that, too.
yeah, that they're hard to look at, but it's important for us as Americans to see some of the dark parts of our own story as well.
And we were swept up by a thing called eugenics, which was this pseudoscience that was an attempt to sort of make a hierarchy of races and ethnicities.
Right.
There's only one race, and that's the human race. And the fact is that this became very popular, started in Britain, very popular in the United States. People subscribed to it across the board.
You said for feeble-minded?
For feeble-minded.
And
criminals. And the idea was that you would force the sterilization of people among many aspects of eugenics.
Right.
Eugenics is mostly the most insidious thing is the characterization of superior races, which Hitler would borrow in this Aryan idea. But it's also the idea that you would force the sterilization of disabled people and of people who had mental differences and all of that sort of stuff. Those laws were still on the books in 2016.
And that's the key thing, laws. This is not a fringe idea.
No.
This was taught in schools. This was passed by elected bodies.
Yeah.
You know, it was preached from pulpits.
We just have to own what our part is. Obviously, we played an important part in ending the Second World War, but we also have to understand the roles in which we stood by when we could have helped at every level. And both are true. And that's the thing, that the exceptionalism that we have has to come with, if you're going to be exceptional, you have to be self-critical as well.
You have to look in the mirror and see that reflection.
That's right.
And identify with that duality. This documentary was originally supposed to end in 1965 with the shift in U.S. immigration policy. Why did you feel like it was important to bring it all the way up until present day?
as we were working on the film, and we've been working on it for the last 7 years, events around us, we could see the echoes and the parallels between what was happening during the 1930s in Europe and here and what was happening all around us. And we saw things that we felt we needed to sort of pull the thread all the way through to the present. And so, yes, we did rectify some of the pernicious immigration laws in 1965, but the sort of stream of racism and anti-Semitism and bigotry is still part of our society, as we know. And the threat of authoritarianism and the danger of our democracy being under siege, free and fair elections.
Yeah, America
Can we take
has
that
some
for
questions
granted?
to answer.
Well, we wanted to
explaining to
join the conversation right now. There was an urgency. This film was supposed to come out next year, but we accelerated the process. The great Holocaust scholar Deborah Lipstadt in the film says the time to stop a genocide is before it happens.
Yeah.
The time to save a democracy is before it's lost. And that it's incumbent upon us to go and say, look, if you wanted to be in the hippest place, most vibrant in arts in 1930 and 31 and 32, it'd be Berlin. And then the next year, not so much.
Right.
We thank you both because they're saying less than 30 seconds we have to go. Because, Ken, I just want to say something about your look. You have a new look. We all remember you from the Beatle days. This
Yeah.
new look you're doing?
Well, Tom Brokaw from another network told me that I needed to get a big boy haircut. And so I finally, after about 8 or 9 years of temporizing and kicking the
All
can,
grown up?
It's working for you, Ken.
It still cuts in the collar. And
No.
Some schools would not accept
We'll be
that.
back with Talk of the Table. We'll be right back.
Thank you.